Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, new troubles for San Diego hospice, plus questions about school finances as districts shift money around to pay their bills. Also ahead, a report of possible tampering at the San Onofre nuclear power plant. And in our weekly roundtable tonight, the horrors of war extend to combat dogs, what the military is doing to treat canine PTSD. And from our cultures desk, the stories of graffiti artists go on stage in a new play, Street Art Profits. KPBS Evening Edition starts now.
KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Erwin Jacobs and by
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Peggy Pico in for Dwayne Brown. San Diego Hospice has laid off 260 employees and closed its two small hospitals. Earlier this month, we told you about a Medicare audit of our region's oldest and largest hospice organization as part of Medicare's nationwide audit of hospice centers. San Diego Hospice says it hasn't always followed federal documentation guidelines to the letter, and as a result, they may have to refund millions to the federal government. Hospice officials also say their patient load has declined. And San Diego Unified Official School Districts say they have sent the county district attorney information about tens of thousands of dollars missing from their early childhood education program. Our media partner, 10 News, says a district employee is being questioned about the missing money. Search warrants showed $179,000 disappeared over 5 years from two development centers. A district-wide audit revealed the problem. No charges have been filed at this point, and the DA's office has not commented on the matter. If you're a family who makes ends meet by paying one bill one month and another the next, you may relate to this story. San Diego school districts are in the same boat, scrambling to find ways to make their payroll while waiting for state funding checks. The situation has led to some creative accounting practices and got one school district into serious trouble. From our investigations desk, iNewsSource reporter Kevin Crow has the details.
A couple of years ago, the Sweetwater Union High School district in the South Bay borrowed $42 million from a building fund to pay its operating expenses. Now that's kind of like taking money from your retirement account to make your mortgage payment. And it would have been legal if the school board had put the money back into the building fund on time, but it didn't. And that was the beginning of the scrutiny and scandal at Sweetwater. But it turns out school districts across the county borrow from a variety of accounts, some of them building funds, just to meet their everyday expenses. For example, San Diego Unified borrows millions from its workers' compensation funds and its capital facilities funds. It also issues short-term bonds on Wall Street, a type of borrowing that cost the district nearly $5 million this year. The San Diego County Office of Education says school districts can borrow the funds from internal accounts as long as they pay them back, usually within the same fiscal year and with interest. It's about the only way they can pay teachers, given the state is so late with payments. Sweetwater is no longer able to borrow from its building fund, known as Prop O, but it is borrowing from other funds, including its Melrose accounts. That money is supposed to pay for tangible items like schools, buses, and computers, not things like salaries. The County Department of Education says the districts can use Melrose funds if they pay the funds back with interest and if they legally have control over the money. Rick Knott is Sweetwater's chief financial officer.
As long as the CFD fund is made whole for any economic loss it would have suffered, like the interest, there's no consequence to that.
School budgets weren't always like this. The state used to make its payments on time, but since the budget crisis began 5 years ago, Sacramento started deferring payments. Now that voters passed Prop 30, the initiative that raises taxes to fund schools, administrators hope the state can begin to catch up and start making good on its promise to pay on time. For the KPBS iNewsSource Investigations Desk, I'm Kevin Crow.
Come Monday, San Diego will have a new mayor, some new city council members, and a new council president. And it looks like that job will go to city council member Todd Gloria. Today, outgoing council president Tony Young told KPBS he'll support Gloria, giving the Democrat the 5 votes he needs to win the post. San Diego's council president sets the council's agenda and is part of the check and balance system with the mayor. Another hearing is underway tonight about the fate of the San Onofre nuclear power plant. But its operators say someone may have tampered with an emergency generator at the plant last month. Southern California Edison is investigating the incident, but said it would not have posed a danger because San Onofre has been shut down since January. Edison wants to restart one reactor at reduced power. Federal regulators are getting public comments on the plan tonight in Dana Point. Still, a decision is likely to be months away. And the first man released from prison under California's revised 3 strikes law says his goal now is to never go back behind bars. Today, Kenneth Corley thanked his attorneys and spoke to the media for the first time since his resentencing. He had been serving 25 years to life for drug possession, but because he was a nonviolent offender, he was freed under Proposition 36. Now he says he doesn't want to let the voters down, and he promises to stay drug-free.
You know, that's my main goal, is to stay drug-free. You know, that's what got me into prison, you know, so I'm just going to do what's right.
Drugs, I think, were one of those issues that faced Mr. Corley and that he's been working on while he's been in prison. And now the true test is going to happen, but we all have to wrap our arms around him to make sure that he will succeed and give him the tools that it will require to succeed.
And after the news conference, Bonnie DeManis did just that. She literally put her arms around Corley and asked him to keep in touch. A federal judge will decide whether or not to block California's new ban on gay conversion therapy. The therapy is a controversial process which some counselors say can teach gay minors to become straight. The ban does not take effect until January 1st. It's being challenged by some counselors and a few parents who say the therapy helped their sons, while supporters of the ban say the law will protect young people from the practice. It's been rejected by mainstream mental health organizations. The judge ruling is expected next month. Military veterans say about 10% of combat dogs deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan come home with the canine equivalent of post-traumatic stress disorder. Earlier today, I spoke with Tony Perry, San Diego's bureau chief for the LA Times, about this problem. Tony, good to see you again. You wrote a story about a dog named Cora, a combat dog, who apparently suffers from a post-traumatic stress disorder. Where was she deployed, and what did this dog do?
Cora deployed to Iraq, and her job was to sniff out the buried bombs that are the enemy's weapon of choice. She was very, very good for a long period of time. They could trust her off the leash. She would run out there, find them, lay down, essentially signal, hey, here's one right here. She saved American lives.
We're seeing a picture of her, I believe, with her handler. They called her a push-button dog. What does that mean?
Push-button. All you got to do is say, Cora, go. And she did everything required of her, and she loved it. And it was all a game to her. And she trained up well, and her handlers felt close to her, and she performed very, very well until she didn't.
And how did she change? How did they know something was going on?
She wouldn't leave her handler. She wouldn't run loose like she had. She was quarrelsome. She snarled at other dogs. She just wouldn't do what they wanted her to do. And about that time, they redeployed home. And she became yet another dog who has really post-traumatic stress disorder. About a year ago, the veterinarians that run the military dog program out of Lackland Air Force Base, Texas, decided that really dogs too suffer from PTSD and need treatment.
And they did decide that, but there was some reluctance in calling it that. How come?
Well, two things. One, usually decisions like that are vetted through the,
veterinary
system,
right.
Yeah, the publications and professional review, et cetera, et cetera. But also they didn't want to seem disrespectful to the soldiers, Marines, sailors, airborne who have PTSD, to somehow say, and a dog has what you have. But they finally decided they needed to call it something. They needed to signal that some of these dogs that come home, they need help, and they cannot redeploy because they could be dangerous. They could not do their job when it is required of them, and Americans could get killed or injured very severely.
And let's talk about that. Your article talked about, I think, an enormous amount. I think 2,500 dogs, combat dogs, or 2,500 dogs trained at the Air Force Base. And what percentage of them do they think come back with this canine PTSD?
Hundreds and hundreds of dogs have deployed. They're a little cagey on just how many, but they're everywhere in Afghanistan where American troops are, and they were everywhere in Iraq also. They are estimating, and it's an estimate, maybe 10%. That would be hundreds of dogs came back with PTSD. Some of whom so severely traumatized they can never work again for the Department of Defense or Border Patrol or law enforcement. And they just have to be adopted out and let to rest in somebody's backyard and play with the kids. Some can be reconditioned as they were trained up, maybe even given Xanax, and put back either in the field, redeployed to Afghanistan now, or work for law enforcement. Now, Cora, thank goodness for Cora's sake, has a mild case, and they've retrained her, so she will never deploy again. She will go to Afghanistan, but she can still help. She's training the trainers.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because
Sure.
she's not necessarily all better. She's actually a little moody and a little difficult.
Absolutely.
So this is great for the
And,
trainers.
yeah, she's like that grumpy first sergeant you have in basic training. I mean, she's difficult. And so these young airmen, soldiers, Marines, sailors that want to become dog handlers, they give them Cora, among other dogs. And let's see if you can handle a dog who's bulky and who may do what you want or not. Because if you can't handle a bulky dog here, we don't want you to forward deploy and not being able to handle the dog. So in her grumpiness, Cora is still helping save American lives, more indirectly this time, but still helping.
The dogs you were talking about, they come back from combat and often they're retrained to go into border or whatever. So they're being treated with training, with Xanax, things like that. Put it in context for us. Dogs in the military is a very passionate subject, shall we say. Tell us about what happened in Vietnam.
Oh, absolutely. Dogs were used in Vietnam for many of the same purposes, looking for buried explosives, going into tunnels, guard dogs, what they call controlled aggression. Very, very important in Vietnam. They didn't come home, most of them, for various reasons, and it's still...
Well, they were left behind,
They
correct?
were left behind. Some of them had an illness that the military didn't want to deal with, so they left them behind. A lot of residue of anger of dog handlers, these many decades later, that their dogs were left behind. Military now has made it very, very clear. These dogs that we have now, they're not equipment. They're coming home. And when they come home, if they need treatment, they're getting treatment.
Getting treatment for this canine PTSD. Tony Perry, thanks so much for bringing us this story. Now, you can read Tony's entire story on canine PTSD by clicking on the link on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
You may recall last summer's Big Bay Bust, as it's been called, the 4th of July fireworks show that fizzled because of a computer problem. There it is, practically in its entirety. Well, the annual show still has a lot of sizzle for our community, $10.6 million to be exact. Researchers at Point Loma Nazarene say the annual show increases spending at local restaurants, hotels, and shops. They found the event increases hotel business by about 30%. Producers of the Big Bay boom say there will be a special show in 2013 to make up for last July's disappointing display. Our local economy picked up just a bit last month, according to the latest report from the University of San Diego. The index of leading economic indicators rose by 0.3% in October. It's not as much as the month before, but economist Alan Ginn says consumer confidence keeps going up, and so does the number of building permits. What hasn't changed much, local stock prices, help wanted ads, and the unemployment rate. But Jen says we should see more jobs created in 2013. This is day 4 of a strike at the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. The nation's busiest cargo complex has been idle because of a contract dispute with clerical workers. Dock workers are not crossing the picket line, and ships have been stacking up offshore, even though contract talks have resumed. Victoria Hamilton, San Diego's director of the city's Arts and Culture Commission for the last 24 years, recently announced her resignation. Earlier this week, I talked with Ms. Hamilton about the commission and the future of the Arts Committee here in San Diego. Victoria, thanks for being here. Now, Mayor Jerry Sanders has said that you single-handedly have changed the way we support the arts in San Diego, and you actually built the commission from scratch in 1988.
That's correct.
What are the most significant changes that you've seen since then?
Well, first of all, when I moved to San Diego, downtown was pretty scary. Balboa Park was pretty shabby. There wasn't much going on in the neighborhoods. And so when the city decided to put some serious investment in arts and culture, we began to see the arts flourish, not just downtown and in Balboa Park, but in our neighborhoods, and even the festivals we have every weekend, for example.
It certainly expanded, but you certainly had to change the way that city officials were looking at our arts and community, kind of culture here. What did you need to convince them of?
Well, originally they had to be convinced about the impact in terms of economy, jobs, the return of the city's investment, how it impacted the quality of life, and how it might even impact San Diego's reputation as a cultural destination.
Certainly. I mean, back then, people didn't come to San Diego for the arts.
That's right.
The arts, certainly, but I think a lot of that has changed. What are the challenges in this community, in our arts and culture community, that we still face today?
I think what we face is similar to what's happening around the country, and that is how do we provide programming and access to the changing demographics, and especially in San Diego, and what kind of outreach programs do arts and culture organizations provide? Are they going into the schools, into the neighborhoods? For example, in the museums now have Spanish language
I've noticed
tags.
that, yeah. Correct. And there also theater. We're looking at some video of some live theater. That's certainly grown.
That has changed as well. We're seeing more ethnically diverse actors on our stages, in our boardrooms, patrons, and certainly the programming is a lot more diverse than it was in 1988.
Let's talk about public art. You spearheaded that public art master plan, and it's become a very important model. Why do you think that is?
It was fairly aggressive. We turned the city's 1% for art and capital improvement projects to a 2% requirement, and we also have a 1% in large private development projects. So it was very controversial, but we succeeded to get unanimous support from the mayor and council at that time.
Public art typically sparks controversy. Is that why maybe the city was shy about investing in it?
I don't think so.
No?
The city, we haven't had that much controversy, actually. We've seen controversy at the port and the airport, but not necessarily city projects.
Oh, that's good. See, we're progressive here in San Diego. What are you most proud of at your tenure here?
I guess I'd have to say what happened on October 22nd. The city council unanimously supported what we called a Penny for the Arts 5-year blueprint. And what that will do is dedicate 1 cent of the transient occupancy tax to support arts and culture. And that's going to be a huge benefit to this community.
How do you think Mayor-elect Bob Filner will interact with the arts community?
I think very well. He has a very robust arts platform while he was running. We met with him yesterday, and he talked about how important this job, the director of the commission, is. And he was eager to talk some more, so we have another meeting with him tomorrow.
What is next for you?
Next is finding another job here in San Diego where I can continue to advance arts and culture.
I have an idea.
Yeah.
I have an idea for you. The Centennial Celebration in Balboa Park is coming in 2015. Is that something you could be involved in?
Well, if there's a way I can help, I certainly will. I'm very excited about the prospect.
All right, excellent. Well, Victoria Hamilton, San Diego's director of the City Arts and Cultural Commission for the last 24 years. Thank you for your service to the city, and thanks so much for talking with us.
Thank you for having me.
The surf was way up again at San Diego County beaches. Here's a look at the waves at OB Pier earlier today. This was well after high tide. Plenty of people came out to get a look at the surf, but they stayed out of the water, at least while our camera was there. The National Weather Service has warned of dangerous riptides. The high surf advisory is in effect through Monday afternoon, and there's still a chance of rain through this weekend. Here's a closer look at the forecast. And in our weekly Public Square, our report on San Diego cycle tracks or blocked off lanes to protect riders on the road got mixed reviews on our website. D-Pro-10-Pronator wrote, cycle tracks are a great idea. Friars Road, the stretch within the cycle tracks, is a great road to ride on. But web commenter Comus disagreed, writing, until the time when cyclers start obeying the laws, registering their bikes, and obtaining rider's licenses, as well as law enforcement observing violations by cyclers and doing nothing, they will be opposed by me. And from Facebook, Joshua Tootle had this colorful take on the issue. He said, bicyclists ride like morons, drivers drive like morons, and we shouldn't mix the two. You can join this conversation or comment on any KPBS story by following us on Twitter, liking us on Facebook, or just email us at publicsquare@kpbs.org.
I'm Ray Suarez. On the next news hour, the fight over the filibuster rules in the Senate, plus Shields and Brooks. That's Friday on the PBS NewsHour.
Circle, describes itself as a community-based theater. It kicks off its second season with a focus on a community of artists that are often regulated to the fringes. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando looks at the evolution of the play Street Art Profits.
Graffiti artists see walls as blank canvases, but too few are made available to them to paint. That's why graffiti art has its roots on the streets.
Back in the day, I would have to go out and paint illegally.
Saki is a self-taught artist who's been using a spray can and brushes to express himself for 3 decades.
So it was really complex letters, characters, backgrounds, and your surface is 8 feet tall by 60 feet. So imagine you're that close painting these huge murals under pressure with security guards or other crews that are going to try and vic you for your paint. So a lot of pressure. So it's incredible that that art was accomplished in those circumstances.
The challenge of putting up a wall and the need to express oneself attracted Catherine Haroff to the world of graffiti art.
It's all about being heard and finding your voice as an artist wherever it may be.
Haroff is artistic director of Circle, a community-based theater company. Haroff turned to local street artists as inspiration for Street Art Profits, a collection of 5 short theater pieces. She says she created Circle for the very same reasons graffiti artists paint.
Circle was created because I was hungry to be able to do all of the things that I felt passionate about, and I couldn't live day to day wondering when that was going to happen. And I feel like graffiti art is very similar in that way, that they paint where they are going to paint, because they can't wait until they have a space to do it in.
Michael Mahaffey is another one of the artists serving as inspiration for Circle Street Art Profits.
I have a background in fine art, and I had a lot of difficulty getting that kind of work into galleries.
I'm sorry. We at Liberations Art Studios are looking for a more refined aesthetic at this particular gallery. I'm sure you could find an art receptacle downtown that would be more your speed.
So I kind of felt like if I can't get my artwork in a gallery, then maybe I can get it on the street.
They're trying to get their art up in the world. They're putting their names up in the world. They're putting these beautiful pictures up in the world. And I think we're really trying to go into the community and find those stories and bring those stories to life on stage.
Melissa Coleman-Reed wrote the piece called Fame and Grunt.
So where they're giving life in art on a wall, we're bringing it into this building and encouraging people to come and experience and live with us and meet these new characters.
Adam Parker directed Big Block Letters, the piece inspired by Saki's life and art.
And it wasn't the art that I connected to so much as it was the people and what they have to endure to make this happen, and the struggle that they go through to do something that they love so much but has so many consequences.
I think everyone that does it, there is this feeling that you have an idea or an emotion or something that you have to just get across, even if there is somebody chasing after you, the flashlight and a gun. You know, it's just this extreme passion. It's just that need to get your message out there, come what may.
One of the things Parker tapped into was the camaraderie of painting with friends.
What happens when a crew gets together and they go out at night and they start doing the art, they start spraying, and how much more invigorating that part of their life was than the stuff that happens during the day for them.
To Mahaffey, Saki's story comes from a different generation.
My personal experience is that it's been a very solitary thing, not so much with crews. And so it's kind of fun seeing the camaraderie between them, between like a whole group of people.
Saki's grateful to see his style of graffiti art highlighted in Street Art Profits.
I think it will definitely, reach to maybe a different crowd of people that normally wouldn't think twice about graffiti.
Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
You can find all of tonight's stories and more on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks again for joining us and have a fantastic weekend.